kind of interesting how Injustice 2 has started recently, and I'm talking about Marvel. Yeah, this is the first time I've actually talked about Marvel Comics. Usually I talk about Injustice. But, over the past couple of years, Marvel has decided to change things up with their characters, and some of them have changed sex, and some of them have become minorities, put more diversity in their cast, and how did it go? I didn't read all of the comics, so if you're a fan of like Wolverine, that haven't really read Wolverine or know what's going on after Logan died, and I can't really talk about it. But there are 4 characters I do want to talk about in this little Marvel shake-up with their cast, and I'm just going to tell you about the story in general and just whether or not I would recommend it. And so here we go. Let's start with Thor. Now, I'm going to be perfectly honest. I don't really read Thor all that much. I have never really read Thor all that much. I did read it when they rebooted it like 10 years ago. Oh man, it's been that long already. Oh crap. Yeah, and I kind of liked that run with the story arc, but after a while, I just fell out of reading it. It just happened. But I thought of this new reboot. I was kind of curious because they're saying, no, Thor's going to be a woman. And I was wondering, are they going to do it how Thor is just transformed into a woman and they're just going to find a way to change him back into a man later on? And there's going to be like weird freaking Rule 34 crap going on because those people exist? Or is Thor, Odin's son, going to lose his hammer and a woman's going to pick it up? Thankfully, it was the latter, not the former. And yeah, now we have a new person with the power of Thor. And I was glad that they didn't kill Thor, Odin's son. They did maim him pretty good, though, that's for sure. And I was also wondering that, is this going to be an actual Thor story, but with a woman lead? Or is it going to be a quote-unquote woman comic and just have Thor being the one that's going through it? Thankfully, this time it was the former and not the latter. The story is still very Thor-centric, and it's just you have a new person dealing with these issues, and I like that. I like to have a fresh pair of eyes and a fresh perspective on this sort of story. Not to mention when she first gets the hammer and reveals herself that she's now the goddess Thor, goddess of thunder, I guess you want to call it. There was a time where she tried to put on a fake accent, the whole thou and thees and all that stuff you read in Thor, but Thor's mom said, no, just who are you really? You don't have to put on an act. And I did like the fact that not everyone was on board with this new Thor. Even Odin's son himself was not happy with there being a new Thor and that the hammer was no longer his. And I kind of wanted to have a little bit more of that, but what they did with it was good. And Odin as well is pissed that there's a new person with the hammer and calls her a thief and not worthy of being an Asgardian. And I'm not going to say who the new Thor is, but she's been a part of Thor's story for a while now, so it makes sense that somebody close to Thor would actually pick up the hammer. But all in all, I think if you're a fan of the stories of Thor in the comics, I think you'll probably like this new take on this character. So let's move on to Captain America. Man, this is some good stuff they're doing with Captain America. First of all, they depowered him. They made him an old man, and his shield went to Falcon, Sam Wilson, and now he's the new Captain America. But then you have Captain America being rejuvenated in a sense by the Cosmic Cube in human form. And what they're doing with both of these men is really good, I gotta say, because they have rewritten Captain America all these years what we know of Captain America has been wrong. That's all I'm going to say. And it was even in the first issue, like there was a big story on Yahoo and, you know, all these sites talking about the big twist of Captain America at the end of Captain America, Steve Rogers #1 with him. I want to say it here. I'm just going to spoil the first issue. I think we're about 20 issues in or something like that, where he says, Hail Hydra. And oh crap, he's a Hydra? No. It's got to be him being in disguise and all this and underground. No. But they explain how it happened and they go into his backstory and why he's now being a part of Hydra. It's really fascinating. And his story in Civil War 2, which is a good story. There's a good stuff in that one too. It makes sense in the way that he's able to use this superhero Civil War to his advantage was pretty good, I gotta say. And Sam Wilson as Captain America, there's some good stuff in there, and it's very much a take on us. Now he's on Twitter at the beginning of the issue. It's like a Twitter feed, and you see people liking him and disliking him. They want him to give back the shield to Steve Rogers. And there's this whole thing about him trying to be Captain America, trying to be the symbol of America when America is just so broken. And there's a lot of great stuff here. You know, it takes a couple of issues to really get going, but once it gets going, especially with AmeriCops and that whole deal, it's just, man, this is good stuff. I couldn't get enough of it, to be honest. And what they're doing with him now, I'm really curious what they're going to do next. I really want to know what they do with him, especially with the big story arc that's coming up with Captain America, Steve Rogers. But I wanted to save probably the last characters, because they're spun off from the same character, Spider-Man. You have Spider-Gwen, which I think this one's about 3 years, 3 or 4 years maybe, and it's an alternate timeline. It's basically an Elseworld where Gwen Stacy's the one that is bitten by the spider and gets powers. And some of you might go, oh, they're just going to find a way to work Peter Parker in there. Maybe he's going to get his own spider powers or something else, and he's going to be right alongside Gwen Stacy. Or maybe he's going to be the relationship that... No. Unfortunately, they don't really show us, not in the series itself, because it spun off from a big Spider-Man story. And I had stopped reading Spider-Man for years, but then this story kind of got me into reading not really Peter Parker's story, but Gwen Stacy's story, and one other person that I'll get to later. But her take on being Spider-Man is pretty interesting. I like the costume. The design is really interesting. And I like that she has a very different relationship with her dad, with the Parkers, with Mary Jane, all these different people. Now it really feels very separate and very different from what we're used to with Peter Parker. And that's good. I wanted something different, and we're getting it. And she's even had some good crossovers, including the one they just finished up, sitting in a tree with Miles Morales. Yeah, the new Spider-Man, Miles Morales. First he was an Ultimate Spider-Man, but unfortunately that one wasn't too good because he wasn't able to stand on his own. He was constantly being put into the big story arcs that are happening in the Ultimate Universe. And then I believe in 2012 or 2013, they ended it. They ended the entire Ultimate Universe and just brought him into the regular Marvel Universe. And I think he started in maybe last year or 2015, late 2015. But now he's really been established in the Marvel Universe, and he's good. I like him. He's very likable. He has a good part in Civil War II. Not to mention his relationship with his family. It's very interesting because you have one parent knowing who he is and the other doesn't, and him constantly wondering about what he's doing right, and bouncing things off his best friend who finds out who he is. And there's a lot of good dynamics here that we didn't get with Peter Parker, even the Ultimate Universe, which I liked a lot. But this one, it feels like a new Spider-Man, and a Spider-Man for this generation to really latch onto. And the fact that he's a mixed race Spider-Man. You know, there's a lot of mixed race people. There are blacks, Puerto Ricans, Mexicans, Japanese, you know, Cubans. You name it. America's a melting pot, despite what bigots might want to believe. But this is a really good Spider-Man, and if I have to recommend one of these four, I recommend Miles Morales as Spider-Man. That's the story. I was like, yeah, I can't wait to read that story. There's some really good stuff, and Miles is, as a character, I think he's really good. Not to mention, he's not the stereotypical black character that we've seen for many years. He's a teenager, just like Peter Parker was, but in a different way with his relationships and the people he deals with. Not to mention dealing with being in the shadow, basically, of this new Spider-Man. Of the original Spider-Man, I should say. Sorry. Second one, I'd probably... Oh, man. As much as I like Spider-Gwen, I would probably say, especially right now, the Captain America stuff. That's good stuff right there. And I'd recommend going and reading that for now. Maybe in the future, Spider-Gwen would probably overtake it. Depends on what her stories are and how good they get. Third right now would be Spider-Gwen. And then at the bottom, Thor. I'm not an authority on that character. So somebody else is going to have to talk about all that sort of that character. So I want you to think, have you been reading the new Marvel comics? Who's your favorite character of these four that I've listed? And what do you think? Which character do you think should get another reboot, or added a new character into the world, in a sense? So that's all I got. Tomorrow I'll probably have another one out that has nothing to do with comics or movies. It's gonna be something different. So till then, take care.